Hiya, I'm here today with Ciara O'Loughlin. Ciara is a journalist for the Irish Independent and the Independent.ie, and she's a breaking news reporter. How are you today, Ciara?
I'm great. How are you? It's a bit rainy outside, but sure, look, we have to put up with that, don't we?
Irish weather, we're used to it by now, aren't we? Well, look, we'll get started with how you got into journalism. So if you can just tell everyone how you got your start.
Yeah, sure. So when I finished school, I actually went to college in NUIG in Galway and I did English and Irish. Now, the reason I did this was because I always wanted to get into journalism, but I was just that little bit scared to, go right into a journalism course. I was kind of thinking maybe I'd get into teaching. I wasn't too sure. So I went to Galway and started that, but I surely and slowly realised when I was there that journalism was definitely what I wanted to get into. I started writing for the college paper and I just, that was where my passion was. I hated going to lectures. I just felt like doing English and Irish was just a carry on from school. It wasn't really like I was gaining kind of skills or anything. So I did finish the year out now in that course, but I decided I'm going to switch to journalism. Like that's what I want to do. So I actually came back to Dublin, where I'm from, went to DCU and did journalism there for 3 years. So that's kind of just where it all started. And then when I was in DCU, I enjoyed the course, but kind of where I got a lot of my practice and experience from was being in the college paper and then the college radio station. So in my final year, I think I spent more time in the radio station than I did in lectures, to be honest. Like I loved it. But yeah, that's kind of where I started. And then when I finished college, I did an internship with Image magazine. It's a women's Irish fashion magazine.
Yeah.
I actually always thought that I'd like to go into I had that idea in my head that I'd maybe like to go work in a magazine, work in fashion, and then although I really enjoyed working there, it actually showed me that's not what I wanted to do. And I kind of wanted to be in a busy newsroom. From having that bit of kind of experience in college where I was kind of going from the radio station to the college paper. And then I did a bit of work in RT as well as a runner. I kind of liked the kind of, running around. But I know that sounds weird, but
the fast pace of it.
Yeah, that's the word. I liked the fast paced kind of environment. And that's when I was like, no, I'd actually love to work in a newsroom. So I started out then in extra.ie. It's a website as part of the Irish Daily Mail. And I was there for almost a year. And then I started in the Independent as a breaking news reporter last September. So I'm almost there a year now. And yeah, that's where I am now. It was weird starting the job in a pandemic, but I was just happy I had a little bit of experience from my time the year before that. But yeah, still relatively new. I'm 2 years now, working full time. But yeah, absolutely loving it.
Brilliant. Good stuff. And Ciara, you won Student Feature Writer of the Year 2019. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So that was my final year in college. So the SMedias in Ireland are like the National Student Media Awards, and all the different colleges can enter into it. So I was nominated for 3 categories, and then I won Student Feature Writer, that was the one I won. And yeah, it was a really nice like boost in my confidence. Like awards don't mean everything, but especially because I just graduated and I was going into the scary workforce, it kind of gave me that little bit of boost and that confidence. And like being honest, I still remember the day I was nominated, like, and I was like really shocked. Like I genuinely was like, I knew I put in work, but I just hadn't enough confidence in myself. So that it really helped. And also the category which I won, the 3 pieces that I entered for it, they were all topics, they were all under healthcare, I suppose you'd say. So that kind of gave me the push as well, that's kind of the area I wanted to go into. Now it wasn't healthcare, it was like about the people behind things. Like one of them was about I spoke to a woman, I don't know if you remember the cervical cancer scandal a few years ago, where all the smear tests were messed up, and so I spoke to a woman who was affected by that. And it was kind of stories that I was just really proud of and happy that these people actually shared their stories with me. So it was lovely.
Special then.
Definitely, yeah. So it was great, and it's nice to have a trophy in the house.
The next question then, it could be running on from that sort of, is what story have you written that you're most proud of? And with that,
I'd say like more recently, the story I'm most proud of was in think, was it around, yeah, it was around March, April, you know, in Ireland we were having big issues with the vaccine rollout, you know, compared to the UK. We just didn't have the supply.
Mm-hmm.
And this man wrote to me, his son has an intellectual disability and a lot of health problems, and he actually wasn't put on the priority list.
Okay.
So say all his friends who he was in his day center with, who also
Mm-hmm.
had, you know, health issues, they were all getting vaccinated, and he was just sitting there at home. Like, he
Yeah.
was high risk, he couldn't leave the house. So his dad wrote to me, and then I wrote a story about it. And then following up on that, a TD actually, you know, sent him a letter and said, ask your ask your doctor for a spare vaccine. So that's like, oh God, like that shouldn't be the way things are going. But anyway, so then I wrote a follow-up story about that, and in the end he got his vaccine.
Oh, that's
so
brilliant.
yeah, that was really, like, the dad messaged me and he was so thankful, and you know, he got the vaccine in the end. So that was kind of one moment, because, you know, especially working in the pandemic, there were definitely times where I just didn't want to write about COVID. I was really fed up with it all.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And in that story I was like, this is why. Do you know what I mean? So it did really make a difference, and he
Such
was
a
really
huge impact. Like, that's a massive impact for a story to have. I'm sure that changed his life.
Yeah, I mean, he would have obviously, you know, got it a few months later in the end, but he would have been staying inside. He wouldn't have seen his friends or anything. So yeah, it's great.
That's excellent. And Ciara, if you could write about anything at all, what would you choose to write about, and why?
Yeah, so kind of following up, I suppose, in that story, is I've always been really interested in disability rights. My brother actually has special needs, and I kind of saw firsthand during the pandemic just how left in the dark they were. I know it's kind of cliche to say, but you know, what I want to do really is giving a voice to the voiceless, and they're people who are so, they're, you know, they don't have people speaking for them. A lot of them can't speak up themselves. So that kind of goes into the whole kind of wanting to work, you know, as a health reporter. You know, that's kind of the stories I think that are really important. And yeah, just over the pandemic, I think that they were really, you know, people with disabilities really were kind of left, you know, here in Ireland, like, all the schools reopened, but still the disability day services haven't, like, fully recommenced. So yeah, it's just a mess, to be honest.
Then I'd say this is probably going to roll on then from that as well. But what current issue then are you most interested in, and why? Would that be the same, along the same lines, or?
Yeah, along the same lines. And then something kind of that's been discussed in the news now the past few days is the maternity restrictions that women are facing. I mean, like, we've reopened indoor dining for people who are vaccinated. You know, some events are going ahead, yet women still can't have their partner with them for their full labor. Like, a lot of hospitals are coming out and saying, you know, they're using these words, I think, that are confusing people, because they keep saying, but women can have their partners for active labor, and it's like, active labor is actually a very small portion of the whole labor. You know, women are, especially for, I think, mothers who are being induced, you know, they're waiting hours and hours on their own, like, so yeah, that would be kind of the current issue that I'm, you know, most interested in. I've always been really interested in women's health. I mean, I think it's such an important topic. Like, it really isn't spoken about enough. And you know, I think the cervical cancer scandal is where that kind of really came to light, about how women are just, you know, aren't being treated how they should be.
And are not being listened to either.
No,
you
exactly.
play a really, really big role then, giving them the voice, you know?
Yeah, hopefully, anyway.
Well, listen, what do you think the most important quality a journalist should have? What is the most important quality a journalist should have?
I mean, I personally think that, you know, journalists get this like, people kind of think we're really hard and cold and, like, just out there to kind of, like, throw questions at people. Whereas, and now it does kind of depend what you're reporting on. Obviously, if you're speaking to politicians and stuff, it's different to speaking to the general public. But I think in the kind of stories I've been doing, where you're, you know, wanting to talk to just ordinary people, I think the most important quality is just being empathetic and being understanding. Like, if you're understanding of what someone's going through, they're much more likely to talk to you and trust you, you know. And trust, that's another big thing. And obviously, you know, we all have things that, you know, we all have sides that we go towards, but obviously being objective is, like, I mean, I suppose the number one quality. for a journalist. But yeah, just something that would pop into my head, I think that isn't said enough, is being empathetic and, being understanding.
Yeah, definitely. And then what is the best part of your job? And then on the flip side, what's the worst part of your job?
Yeah, I suppose the best part of my job is seeing changes being made. Like I spoke about that young man earlier who got his vaccine. Like that is probably the best part about it. But the reason I got into journalism is just because I love talking to people. And I think it's really important that you enjoy that, because obviously that's kind of the main part of your job.
Yeah.
And then obviously I was always interested in writing, so the two go well together. But and the best part is, seeing your stories actually, out there, whether it's in the paper or online. Like it is really rewarding to, put work into something and then you can physically see it, because a lot of things you could work on for ages but not actually, have kind of a proper end result.
Yes.
So it is a really rewarding job, and that's kind of, it's not even like you're waiting long to see the process. Like, you're getting things up, every day. The worst part about it, I'd say, is probably the pressure. For breaking news, we would be expected to kind of get things out, within 20, 30 minutes, or if something's like really breaking, it's that 5 minutes you need to have it out. So the pressure of that can be, a little bit daunting, and sometimes it does kind of overwhelm you. So I'd say that's probably the worst part. And Twitter, people are horrible on Twitter.
There's been so many people that are saying that as the worst part of their job as a journalist.
It's very annoying, like, because I used to love Twitter, and now I only have it on my work phone, and I don't go on it when I'm not working, because people are just, they don't see it as a person. Like they just see the story, and they're not even mad at the way, like, I don't mind criticism. People have criticism, of course. But people get angry at you for what's being said, and it's like, well, I didn't make up those rules. I didn't say that.
You're just reporting on it. Yeah. No, that does seem to be something that's become really, really widespread, and especially for females as well. I think it's for women, it seems to be like you're being attacked for nothing to do with your work. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, it just seems like such a horrible side to the job,
Definitely, yeah.
What does a typical day look like then? You've given us a bit of insight there into how fast things can move. So I'm asking what a typical day looks like. There probably isn't a typical day, is there, in a breaking news reporter's day?
Yeah, well, like it's kind of hard for me to answer it really properly, if you get me, because I only started last September when we're in a pandemic. So I'm actually working a lot from home, which isn't generally what you would be doing. Now I do go out and about a bit, but generally it's kind of, if you're on the morning shift, it's just tuning on, listening into all the radio stations, seeing what you're being sent from your editor to, make phone calls on, or if you need to go out and, check it out. But since COVID, a lot of it actually was, online. Like even if something did happen, like if there was a fire or if someone was stabbed or something like that, a lot of it was, just ringing people and ringing the guards, because they didn't want you going out. Now that has changed slightly, so we have been going out to more things. But day to day, it's kind of just whatever's happening. It's, if, I mean, through the pandemic, it was a lot of COVID stuff and COVID numbers, and tuning into the press conferences, going to the press conferences, just that kind of thing. But it's getting things out quickly and then following it up. So the way we would work is, say if something's really breaking, like say someone was stabbed, we'll say that, and you have your initial information. This is actually how journalism has changed a lot since online. We would try and get that up as soon as possible. Now, obviously still being entirely accurate, but get that up as soon as possible, and then adding to that. So then making your phone calls, trying to figure out more. And that's the way most places work now, is getting things up and then following up on it afterwards. Whereas when it was just the paper, obviously they give themselves a bit more time to get it all together.
Yeah. So it is just getting faster with the online sort of.
Yeah. It's definitely more of a more stress as well in a way. Like I was actually at the airport there the day before yesterday when Kelly Harrington came home with her gold medal, and I was talking to another reporter there, and she worked just a paper.
Mhm.
And I was so jealous. I was like, oh, she's all day to put this together. Whereas in my head, I'm just constantly thinking, like, we want this as soon as. So that's, yeah, so it's kind of a downside as well. But to be honest, it's just the way that journalism has gone. And you have to kind of keep up with it, you know.
Yeah. Have you got any tips then for aspiring journalists? Could you maybe share 3 tips for aspiring journalists?
Yeah, sure. I suppose my number one tip would definitely be to try and get experience. Like whether you're in school or you're in college, or if you want to change career, whatever it is, just it's actually really easy to just get some experience. That doesn't even mean that you have to find somewhere that will take you on for an internship. Like there's lots of, like, where I got most of my experience was working in a community radio station, like, and that was amazing. Even starting a blog. I had a blog for years, and that was kind of the starting point for me. And like everything, the more you do something, the better you get. So if you're practicing your writing skills on a blog, you're gonna get better at it, I think definitely gaining experience is, I mean, maybe that sounds a bit obvious, but that's kind of the key. What else would I say? Any tips? When you're like really trying to get in somewhere, just making the calls and making connections. A lot of us, and I was definitely terrible for this myself, was just emailing people. Like I would email everyone and then be like, why haven't I getting a reply? Like if you're emailing, I used to do this in college, I would have a story idea and I would email like all of the different editors and newspapers and stuff, and then I'd be like, when I didn't get anything back, I just presumed they didn't think it was a good story, and then that knocks your confidence. But no, that could have been the case. But I think a lot of the times now is they get so many emails, like they don't see them. I don't see half of my emails either. I'm sure you're the same, like, so, and I just didn't realize that. Then just pick up the phone. I know it can be scary, but if you want to be a journalist, unfortunately picking up the phone is actually what you're going to be doing multiple times a day, and once you do it, it's fine. I used to be terrified to ring people, like, because I just grew up, like, we just grew up texting, like, so make the calls and it does get easier.
And it definitely does get easier once you start doing it. It is something that it's so nerve-wracking at the start, isn't it?
For sure.
And then could you maybe tell us one thing about yourself that's not related to journalism?
Yeah, so I actually was thinking about this earlier after I got your email, and I was having a bit of an existential crisis because I was like, what do I do that isn't journalism? Like, I've only been doing it for a few years, so I was like, this is bad. But then I kind of thought of a funny story. I don't know if you'll find it funny, but I worked in Tenerife for 2 summers while I was in college. I just worked in an Irish bar. And one night I was singing karaoke, and this woman came up to me, and I don't know if you know Take Me Out. So she was the producer on, well, she said she was one of the producers on Take Me Out, and Tenerife is actually where the contestants go for their like dates afterwards. It's the Isla de Fernando. And so she asked me if I'd go on Take Me Out, and me, like, whatever, I was like, yeah, like, why not? Now the story doesn't end as interestingly as you think. They sent me the application, and you had to be a resident of the UK. I didn't get on, and that could have been my chance,
Brilliant. Very good. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Well, listen, if people want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my Twitter is Ciara_OLO. If you go on the Irish Independent website, which is independent.ie, you can click on journalists and you can find me there, and all my stories are there as well.
Brilliant. And if people want to find out more about us, you can find us on Twitter at legitimate_app or on the website legitimate.io. Ciara, thanks for your time today.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you.